Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it.
The JAMODI podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
No doubt, Coach. That's you're right on the money. And I think I was talking with Coach Sharman White with USA Basketball, and he was talking about how what really trips coaches up or teams up is a lack of not just organization, but details. And he said, the more information that I give my parents, not and things like schedules, practices, times, but also expectations for how all of the team and coaches are going to live, the more that I gave them that, the byproduct was, because he didn't go into it with that intention of, if we do this, we'll have no parent problems. That's not the intention to start out, but a byproduct of being that intentional is that you have fewer problems. So like, I think if coaches are have a bad set of parents, right? And I use quotes for anybody listening, a bad set of parents, maybe that's true, but what could we have done to, like you said, almost like a preemptive strike at the beginning to help them maybe not be so terrible?
Well, disarmament, it's funny you say that about the calendar and everything else. Another thing, we'd have it all mapped out. And even when I was a professional coach in St. John, I had a player who played at St. Mary's in San Antonio, Marvin Binney, who, I still am close with, but he was a point guard for us. And, I'd ask him out, hey, what'd you appreciate about how we did things? What can we do better? But it's funny you say that about the calendar. He's like, from the start, just the fact that you sent out the whole season calendar, we knew when the days off were going to be. We knew when practice was going to be. We knew how to schedule the rest of our days and life and everything else. And the fact that we knew from the start was like so different, but also like awesome, because it just helped me kind of map out the rest of my days. And that helped me be a better pro. So even though, like we get caught up in like, you need to know the playbook, you need to know all this stuff, but you're right. Knowing how you're going to manage the rest of your life, and then the leader being able to communicate those parameters for you, so allows you to lean into your job more when you're there and to step out of it and compartmentalize when you're not.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think you could be a great communicator, charismatic, the type of coach that people love to be around and want to follow. But if those details start to fall apart, the time you said practice was going to end, it's 30 to 45 minutes every time. There's changes constantly. But I think on the note of changes, they have to understand that in life, change happens. Things come up. Gyms that we thought we had rented, we don't. Opponents cancel. But here's the promise, parents, is that we will give you that information as soon as we can, and we will have answers for what we're going to do. But that when that stuff starts to work its way in, it's amazing how quickly people don't care as much about the charismatic, the knowledgeable, how much those things, I think, start to erode the trust that kids or parents have in coaches.
That's it. That's right there. You said it. It's about the trust you're building. That's the trust fund, that you're building every day. But that's also goes back to, I remember I worked a camp for years in Snow Valley camp in Santa Barbara, the original in Santa Barbara. And now, Coach Showalter's doing
nice.
the one in Iowa as well. But that, tons of folks do. And it's the great camps. But I remember working those camps, and Coach Dave Bullwinkle he used to always work with the point guards, and he's great, still a great coach. He's a scout for the Bulls now, but he'd work with the point guards, and I worked with him several years there in the mornings. But he would always talk about, just them fulfilling their commitments. Just simple things like, you said to the big man you would do this. You meet him there. You say your teacher, just fulfilling your commitments one at a time. And even though it's such a simple concept, I remember I took it from those moments. But I just think that that's just something like every time you tell somebody you're going to do something and you don't, that's a miss. That's a big miss. It's really a big miss. And so back to your point about just trust, it can be, the practice didn't end on time. It didn't start on time. The day off didn't happen the way it did. There's a surprise on schedule. Anytime you surprise somebody, they don't like it. And there's a chance that you're eroding.
And I'll tell you, I wonder if other coaches out there feel this way. I don't get that stressed or worried about the games because at that point, I mean, if we have practiced correctly, put in the time, the plan works, there's a belief in the players, if those things line up, the game will take care of itself. It was the stuff that sometimes were outside of my control. An opponent canceling the day of the game. Those are the things that, like, over the course of the season, I would just dread, like, please don't happen, because I've always felt, even if they know that it's not my fault, if enough of those things start to happen, it's like they start to think maybe it's me. And so it's like, how can we have to control, as coaches, we have to control the things that are in our control and the things you mentioned, and then do our very, very best to pivot and to adjust. But I think if those things outside of our control do happen, but we're also not taking care of the stuff that we should be taking care of, those are no-win situations.
Yeah, and I think a different way of looking at it, that I sometimes tell the players, and these little hiccups, these little missed opportunities for commitments, it's like a death by 1,000 cuts. Eventually it's not the first 500 cuts that get you, but by the time you get withered down and beaten down by these broken commitments, these failed trust issues, all these things, they start to add up. Then all of a sudden you're like, it's by the error number 500, that's when things break apart.
Yeah.
And people wonder what happened to Billy today? Why did he lose his way? And they have no idea. It's because Billy's been, promised something 10 times. He's been let down 12, and, he's tired.
Yeah.
That's it. And you're wondering, why did he act out? Well, he must be having a bad day. And the reality is he's been misled. He's been, he hasn't been treated with respect.
Yeah. But then the opposite is true too. Like, how do we build trust? It's with 1,000 little things. And it takes a lot of time. And the trust fund, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. You build that up, and then that way you can weather, a couple bad ones. And you say, listen, this one wasn't on the radar, like you're saying, the cancellation and the things that come up. Want to have something in the tank there where people say, push comes to shove, I can trust this person that they're giving their doing their level best to do right by me.
Man, I'd love to hear a little bit about your PGC history, because I can't think of a moment in my life in coaching that was a bigger game changer than because I had attended a couple as a player back in high school with Dick DiVenzio, but then to be able to direct for them shaped me in a new way. So what's your history with them?
Yeah, I got on, I think I just went to observe a camp. It was Chad Sanji and Tyler Costin back in.
Wow. That's a good duo right there. Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably, I was a coach at Dripping Springs around early 2000. So it's been a minute. Chad was just getting started as a director way back when. It was a day camp there. One of my friends, Matt Jasinski, who was a coach, found out about it. He said, well, you're going to go do this thing. And I said, I'll give it a shot. It was like a 2-day deal. And then, yeah, man, I was just blown away by, again, the teaching, the ability to kind of like change behavior. You talked about what's some of the traits of a good basketball coach is the first question you asked me. But I sometimes say, like, if the words that are coming out of my mouth don't create a desired behavior, if they don't create the desired behavior or a behavior change or a behavior enforcement or a continuation, then the words really are a waste a lot of times. So I think when I watch PGC, just their intentionality with how they used words, how they used video, how they connected words, video, and on court was just uniquely elite, and it just makes you a better teacher, and it just shows you a way of teaching that is unique, and I think it was very, very formative for me as well.
And you know, those guys that you mentioned, Chad, Tyler, like they're incredible. But we also got to give like Dina Evans a lot of props for she trained them. And then you got to go back even farther. I mean, to Dick. And I reached down because I had running the show. I'm going through it again because there's a whole part for coaches. There's a whole part reminders for players. And the golden nuggets that are in this, the sticky language that he used, I think what it does too for coaches, and you mentioned the language is what I took away from it too. It makes you think about the way you talk to your team and the way you teach what you teach, and how can we simplify it? How can we make it sticky? How can we use creativity to make it long lasting? Like for us, we don't want players to come to the ball when either a guy has it in his hands. You got to ask two questions. Does he need help or does he need space? If he needs space, don't come towards him. And then when he does start to attack a gap, stay away. And we call it, don't be creepy. And that idea, like, you're being creepy. Like it's saying all of those things that I want them. Stay patient, stay away, allow that gap to stay open. Don't walk toward it. All of those things that I could just throw out in one little phrase, being creepy, and it changes. And it does exactly what you said. And then just to give a little bit more credit to now where Mono Watts has taken it to PGC to a whole other level. All of those guys, love them. They're not a sponsor of the podcast, but I'd be honored.
Yeah, no, that's a nice play. Well played. No, I think, yeah, if I can help with that, great. But no, I think that, you know, they do deserve credit. And, you know, I think another part of it is when you see the power of how they use those techniques, and they are techniques, to create desired outcomes in short amounts of time.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, like they can get that type of behavior change in that short of a window. Imagine what I could do over the course of a season if I could, you know, nail my principles down, nail my language down, nail my concepts down that way.
Oh, I love the fact that you used in your pillars, you know, the EQ, the IQ, and then you shaped as its own pillar. Like that's really interesting because what I was guilty of, what I think most coaches, you go to a clinic or a camp, hear something really good, and you just take it home and you dump it all on your team. So in one summer, we went from one culture to, hey guys, now we're shape. We're going to put shape on our back. We're going to all memorize all the letters. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there was no ownership on their part. It was just something I forced on them. Now, again, that's a little bit different than, you know, you're teaching your coaches those standards, you know, which is great. But even with our teams, like we may have some other things that we feel are really important that we stand for. But man, you got to look at something like shape as an overarch or an umbrella, or like to me, that's almost the glue that holds EQ and IQ together right there.
Yeah, 100%. And it's I think it allowed, again, it was a good way to teach and hold people accountable, in quotes, accountable to a standard, or to better put, instead of holding them accountable, is building a clear roadmap to success.
Yeah.
You know, and some people, you know, it is holding someone accountable, but actually before accountability, it should be that you're building a shared vision of what success is for everyone here. That's what a good coach, a good teacher does, is, you know, let's build a shared definition, a shared vision, and a shared process that we're going to use to get to where we want to get to. And that lets everybody take part and lets everyone know a little bit about the rules of engagement.
Yeah. What you're talking about is it gets people committed from the very beginning and committed in the same thing. One of the things we do at PGC that always, at first, it made me a little uncomfortable was we make commitment statements. And that commitment statement, we have to read in front of everybody. And every time that we do a new session with new people, I'd have to read mine, and we had our players do it. But you hold somebody accountable to something that either they're not committed to, or you don't even know what they're committed to. So again, going back to clarity, making sure that they know what those standards are, it allows them to commit to them, and then you can hold them accountable.
I think that goes back to the clarity piece is, that's one that I always lead with in some of whenever I do a clinic was high clarity equals high performance. And, I think that's it. I mean, people just, sometimes I know it's a bit of an art and a science, but I think a lot of people, okay, leaders want to be collaborative, right? They want to be, diverse, like they don't want to micromanage people, right? But there's sometimes like this inability by the leader to still drive a clear set of standards that is really critical. Like by delivering clear standards, that's the art, right?
Yeah.
I deliver clear standards that everybody can kind of push their behavior around these tent poles. Can I do that? Let everyone retain their personalities, let them retain their autonomy, their decision making. But can I tether that to a shared set of standards that everybody can rally around? That's really important. And if you don't do that, if you're not doing that as a head coach or an organizational leader, all you're doing is giving people just a couple of direction points, to kind of point their GPS that they know where to go. And everybody knows how to drive, but not everybody knows where we're going to. So let's share that same destination, and let's also share some of the, you can take lefts and rights along your way. You can take the highway if you want, but we're still getting to this shared destination.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.